Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am Dr. Amna Sajid from the Department of Biochemistry, and today we are going to discuss cardiac enzymes. So these are the learning objectives for today's lecture. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to define the term cardiac markers or cardiac enzymes, enumerate different cardiac markers, and describe the use of cardiac markers in the context of myocardial injury. So what is meant by cardiac markers? These markers are basically myocardial proteins which are released into the bloodstream following necrosis of myocardial cells. For example, in acute myocardial infarction or simply myocardial infarction. So these proteins are located inside the myocardial cells, and whenever there is damage, severe damage to these cells, that they undergo necrosis, then the contents of these cells are released into the bloodstream, and these contents also include certain enzymes which are termed as cardiac markers. And necrosis of myocardial cells usually occurs in the context of ischemia or loss of blood supply to the myocardial cells, and this event is known as acute myocardial infarction or simply myocardial infarction. And acute myocardial infarction is abbreviated as AMI, and myocardial infarction is abbreviated as MI. Both are the same thing. So elevated serum levels of these cardiac markers are used in conjunction with clinical features and ECG changes for the diagnosis of acute myocardial infarction. Right now I would like to mention that there are certain markers whose levels also get elevated in cardiac conditions other than MI, but today's lecture will focus mainly on the diagnosis of myocardial infarction with the help of cardiac markers. We will discuss other conditions as well, but main focus will be on the diagnosis of myocardial infarction using cardiac markers. So some examples of cardiac markers or cardiac enzymes include creatine kinase or CK, troponin, lactate dehydrogenase or LDH, aspartate transaminase or AST, and myoglobin. So as we have discussed earlier, all these cardiac proteins which are termed cardiac markers, these are located inside the myocardial cells, but they differ in their location within the myocyte and their release from the cells after damage and the rate of their clearance from the serum. And because of all these reasons, different cardiac markers start getting elevated at different times. They reach their peak levels at different time and they return back to normal at different times because of these three reasons. So first of all, we will discuss the use of creatine kinase or CK as a cardiac marker. Creatine kinase is primarily located in the cytoplasm of myocardial cells and is involved in the phosphorylation of creatine. The point to remember here is that creatine kinase has three important isoenzyme forms, and these three forms are present in different tissues. So which form is present in the myocardial tissue we will discuss in the next slide. So this table shows the different isoenzyme forms of creatine kinase or CK, and it also shows the location of these three different forms of creatine kinase. So as you can see, there are three isoenzyme forms of creatine kinase termed as CK1, CK2 and CK3. Now CK1 is composed of two polypeptide subunits which are termed as B subunits. So CK1 is also known as CKBB, and CK2 is composed of one M polypeptide subunit and one B polypeptide subunit. So it is also known as CKMB, and CK3 is also known as CKMM as it is composed of two M polypeptide subunits. So creatine kinase is basically a dimeric enzyme, which means that it is comprised of two polypeptide subunits, CK1 also known as CKBB on the basis of its composition, CK2 also known as CKMB, and CK3 is also known as CKMM. So out of these three forms of creatine kinase, CK2 or CKMB is the predominant form of creatine kinase present inside the myocardium or in the heart, and it is also the most specific form of CK inside the heart. So whenever levels of CK2 or CKMB rise inside the blood, there is a suspicion of myocardial necrosis, because CK2 or CKMB is the predominant form of creatine kinase inside the heart, and it is specific to the heart. So another point to remember is that whenever myocardial infarction occurs, the contents of myocardial cells get spilled into the blood, and in those contents are going to be CK2 and CK3. So whenever myocardial infarction occurs, levels of total CK are going to rise, as well as the levels of CKMB. Now, CK1 and CK3 are non-specific to the heart, because CK1 is not present in the heart at all, and CK3 is present in the skeletal muscles as well. So whenever CK3 levels are going to rise, we are going to have a suspicion that some skeletal muscle injury has taken place or myocardial cell injury has taken place. So it is non-specific, because CK3 levels rise indicate both skeletal muscle injury and myocardial cell injury, but whenever CK2 levels rise, it is an indication of myocardial cell injury, because CK2 is specific to the myocardium or heart. So I am going to repeat once again, this is very important. Whenever myocardial cell injury occurs, or whenever myocardial infarction occurs, levels of total CK inside the blood are going to be elevated, as well as level of CK2 or CKMB is going to rise. So whenever there is a suspicion of myocardial infarction, we measure both total CK plus we measure CKMB. CK3 is also going to be raised, but we usually don't measure CK3, because CK3 is non-specific to the heart, because CK3 level elevation indicate both either skeletal muscle injury or myocardial cell injury. So this is the repetition of the same concept. CK2 or CKMB is the form of CK most specific to the heart, and in acute myocardial infarction, CKMB becomes greater than 6% of the total CK levels, because in myocardial infarction, CKMB is going to be released into the blood, and its level is going to increase, and it becomes greater than 6% of total CK. So whenever their CKMB levels are greater than 6% of total CK, there you should suspect myocardial infarction. So creatine kinase levels start elevating in the blood within a few hours of onset of symptoms. They reach their peak at 24 hours and return back to normal within 48 to 72 hours, which is 2 to 3 days. And because CK levels come back to normal at a relatively rapid pace, around 2 to 3 days after the onset of symptom, that is why CK is a very helpful marker for diagnosing of reinfarction. So if a patient, after suffering initial myocardial infarction, he suffers from another attack of myocardial infarction, then in that case CK is a very helpful marker for diagnosis, because we will discuss later that other uh, specific cardiac markers, they return back to normal after quite a long time. Their levels inside the blood remain elevated for quite a long time. So those markers cannot be used for diagnosis of reinfarction in patients, but CK levels return back to normal within 2 to 3 days. So if a patient suffers from reinfarction due to any reason after 2 or 3 days of the initial attack, then in that patient we can again use CK levels to diagnose reinfarction, because in case of reinfarction CK levels will be elevated again. Now we will discuss the use of troponin as a cardiac marker. So first of all, I would like to state that out of all the cardiac markers that we are going to discuss today, cardiac troponin T and I are the most specific markers to the heart. So whenever there is an elevation of troponin T and I levels, the first suspicion would be myocardial cell injury, because these are most specific to the heart. So what is troponin? Troponin is basically a part of the contractile apparatus of skeletal muscles and cardiac muscles, and it is located primarily in the myofibrils inside the heart. So what is it basically? It is a complex of three subunits: troponin C, troponin I and troponin T. Now troponin C is the calcium binding subunit, troponin I is the inhibitory component, and troponin T is the tropomyosin binding component of troponin. As you can see in this slide, the three different subunits of troponin are shown. This is troponin C, which binds with calcium. Troponin T associates with tropomyosin, and troponin I is the inhibitory component of troponin complex, and this troponin complex is involved in the contraction of both skeletal muscles and cardiac muscles. And cardiac specific troponin I and troponin T are the most specific cardiac markers in case of myocardial cell injury. So whenever troponin T and troponin I levels are elevated in the blood, our first suspicion should be myocardial cell injury, such as myocardial infarction. So cardiac troponin levels T and I are the most sensitive and specific markers of myocardial necrosis. So we know what is meant by specific marker. Specific marker means whenever there is an elevation or abnormality in the levels of troponin T and I, we are going to suspect myocardial necrosis, because troponins T and I are specific to the heart. What is meant by being sensitive? Cardiac troponin levels are the most sensitive in case of myocardial necrosis. So being sensitive means, a high sensitivity means that in most patients of myocardial infarction, cardiac troponin levels T and I are going to be elevated. So a high sensitivity means that most patients of, a high percentage of patients of myocardial infarction are going to have elevated levels of cardiac troponin. So other cardiac markers are sensitive, but they are less specific to the heart. This statement means that other cardiac markers, other cardiac enzymes, they are sensitive, which means that a higher percentage of patients of myocardial infarction are going to have elevated levels of other cardiac markers, but those cardiac markers are non-specific. We, after seeing elevation in those cardiac markers, we cannot be sure that myocardial infarction has occurred. Whereas in case of cardiac troponin levels, whenever they are elevated, we have a high suspicion that myocardial infarction has taken place, because they are very specific to the heart. And nowadays troponin T and troponin I levels are increasingly being used alone for the diagnosis of acute myocardial infarction. Why? First, because of their greater specificity, and secondly, because of improvement in the use of troponin I level assays, or you can say the improvement of techniques that are used for measurement of troponin T and troponin I levels. So elevated levels of troponin T and I can be detected within a few hours after the onset of symptoms of myocardial infarction. And these levels peak at about 24 hours after the onset of symptoms and then start declining gradually until they become normal after about 10 days. So this point contains very important information. First of all, the levels of troponin T and I decline gradually after reaching their peak, and secondly, they return back to normal after about 10 days. So 10 days is quite a long period of time, and because of this fact, troponin T and I levels are used for late diagnosis of myocardial infarction. So, what is meant by late diagnosis? So, in certain settings, patients cannot present right away to the hospital after suffering from myocardial infarction. And in such cases, for example, if a patient presents after 2 or 3 or 4 days, in such cases, troponin T and I levels can be used for diagnosis of myocardial infarction, because at around that time troponin T and I levels will be significantly elevated, because their levels decline gradually and they come back to normal after 10 days. So within this time period, whenever a patient presents to the hospital with a strong suspicion of myocardial infarction, in such patients diagnosis can be made by measuring troponin T and I levels. So, apart from myocardial infarction, there are other causes of myocardial damage which are associated with raised troponin levels. But it is important to note that in these causes, the pattern of change of troponin levels will be quite different from the pattern of change in troponin levels in case of myocardial infarction. In myocardial infarction, the troponin levels increase rapidly. They reach their peak and then they decline gradually. And this pattern is specifically for myocardial infarction, whereas in other causes of myocardial damage, the troponin levels will increase little by little according to the level of insult or the level of trauma that has occurred to the myocardial tissue. And that pattern plus the clinical picture and ECG changes, they will be quite different from MI. And so all these things need to be considered together in order to get to a correct diagnosis. So, what are the other causes of myocardial damage which are associated with raised troponin levels? These include myocarditis, which is inflammation of myocardial tissue, pericarditis, which is inflammation of the pericardium, ventricular strain, which is the abnormality in the musculature of ventricles, either left or right ventricle, due to any cause. Discrete episodes of tachyarrhythmia, so whenever there are abnormalities in the rhythm of the heart, there they may be associated with raised troponin T and I levels. Iatrogenic causes such as cardiopulmonary resuscitation and cardiac ablation therapy. So, what is meant by iatrogenic causes? Iatrogenic causes means any medical or surgical intervention or cause that leads to raised troponin levels, and in case of uh, the heart, this may include CPR and cardiac ablation therapy. Now, I hope you know what is meant by cardiopulmonary resuscitation or CPR. What is cardiac ablation therapy? This is the removal of uh, certain tissue of the heart which is responsible for causing arrhythmias. So, removal of such tissue is known as cardiac ablation therapy. So these two iatrogenic causes, they may also be associated with raised troponin levels. So in addition to the myocardial causes of raised troponin levels, there are also certain non-cardiac causes which are associated with elevation of troponin T and troponin I levels, and these include pulmonary embolism, which means the lodging of a clot inside the pulmonary circulation due to any cause, burns, sepsis, and renal failure. And in renal failure, troponin T levels are elevated, not troponin I. And once again, I would like to point out that in these uh, causes, troponin levels need to be viewed in combination with the clinical picture, because the clinical picture in all these conditions is going to be very different as compared to myocardial infarction, and that history of the patient and the clinical features of the patient along with rise in troponin levels can point you towards a correct diagnosis. So now we are going to discuss the use of lactate dehydrogenase or LDH as a cardiac marker. So LDH is a cytoplasmic enzyme which catalyzes the interconversion of lactate and pyruvate. And LDH is a very sensitive marker in case of myocardial cell injury, but it is non-specific, which means that LDH levels will be elevated in other diseased conditions as well, in addition to myocardial infarction. So because of its non-specificity, its use has declined as a cardiac marker, but previously it was used quite frequently for diagnosis of myocardial cell injury. But as we have discussed earlier, nowadays the use of troponin T and I levels for diagnosis of myocardial infarction has surpassed the use of other cardiac markers, including LDH. So another point to remember is that there are 5 isoenzyme forms of LDH, and these 5 forms of LDH are present abundantly in different tissues of the body, and they are present in varying amounts in different tissues. So LDH1 will be, for example, LDH2 and 1 will be abundant in certain tissues, but they will not be present in other tissues. So variable amounts of these 5 isoenzyme forms are present in different tissues. But the predominant form of LDH in the heart is LDH1. So this table shows the different isoenzyme forms of LDH. These include LDH1, LDH2, LDH3, LDH4, and LDH5. So LDH is a tetrameric enzyme, which means that it is composed of 4 polypeptide subunits. And in case of LDH1, the 4 subunits are H4. So LDH1 is composed of 4 H subunits, and it is most abundant in the myocardium and also present in the RBCs. And LDH2 is also present in the myocardium and RBC, but greater activity of LDH1 is seen in myocardium as compared to LDH2. And LDH2 is composed of 3 H subunits and 1 M subunits. I'm not going to go into the details of the other isoenzyme forms. You can study their composition from this table and see where they are located. But we are right now concerned with mostly with LDH1, because it is the form of LDH which is most abundant in the myocardium, and it has, out of all these forms, this form has the greatest activity inside the myocardium. And whenever there is necrosis of myocardial cells, LDH1 levels are going to rise, and total LDH levels are going to rise as well, because small amounts of all these are present inside the myocardium as well, but mostly LDH1 and LDH2 are present inside the myocardium, out of which LDH1 is more dominant. So the point to remember is that in case of acute myocardial infarction, total LDH plus LDH1 levels are going to be elevated inside the blood. So again, repetition of the same concept. In AMI or acute myocardial infarction, both LDH1 and total LDH are elevated inside the blood. Serum total LDH values appear elevated at about 24 to 48 hours after the onset of symptoms. They peak at about 48 to 72 hours and return back to normal after about 6 to 10 days. So, as LDH levels also return back to normal after quite a long time, after about 6 to 10 days, so LDH levels can also be used for late diagnosis of myocardial infarction, for example in patients who present late to the hospital after suffering from symptoms. But its use has been surpassed by the use of troponin T and I levels, because it is non-specific, or it is less specific to the heart as compared to troponin. So in case of late diagnosis nowadays, serum troponin levels are used more frequently than serum LDH levels. So another indication of myocardial cell injury or myocardial infarction is that LDH1 levels become greater than LDH2 levels, whereas normally inside the blood LDH2 levels are greater than LDH1. But in case of myocardial infarction, LDH1 levels become greater than LDH2 levels. Okay, so serum total LDH levels return back to normal after about 6 to 10 days in case of AMI. So what about LDH1 levels? They peak at about 72 to 144 hours, which is roughly 3 to 6 days after the onset of symptoms, and they return back to normal after about 10 days. So this time period is about the same in case of both total LDH levels and LDH1 levels. So again, in myocardial infarction, LDH1 levels become greater than LDH2 levels, whereas normally inside the blood, LDH2 levels are greater than LDH1 level. So whenever there is a reversal of this, which is serum LDH1 levels become greater than serum LDH2 levels, this points towards a diagnosis of acute myocardial infarction. And LDH can be also be used for late diagnosis of MI, but it is less specific than troponin. So usually nowadays troponin T and I levels are used for late diagnosis of MI. So now I am going to discuss the use of myoglobin and AST or aspartate transaminase as a cardiac marker. So myoglobin is a protein which is found inside skeletal and cardiac muscles, and this protein stores oxygen and provides oxygen to the muscle cells when the oxygen concentration inside the cells becomes very low, or oxygen saturation becomes very low. So myoglobin levels increase inside the serum whenever there is skeletal muscle injury or cardiac muscle injury, because myoglobin is a part of both skeletal and cardiac muscles. So therefore whenever myoglobin levels are elevated inside the blood, it points towards either skeletal muscle injury or cardiac muscle injury, but we cannot be sure whether it is due to skeletal muscle damage or cardiac muscle damage. Therefore, myoglobin is a non-specific indicator or marker for myocardial cell injury, and because of this reason its use as a cardiac marker has become obsolete. Same is the case with AST or aspartate transaminase enzyme. AST levels increase in case of myocardial infarction because it is a part of myocardial cells, but AST levels are also seen elevated in other diseased conditions as well, such as hepatitis or other types of hepatic cell damage. So use of AST as a cardiac marker has also become obsolete. So again, why the use of myoglobin and AST as cardiac markers have become obsolete? Because of their non-specificity, plus because of the availability of more specific markers, particularly cardiac troponin T and I. So this slide shows the graphic presentation of all the concepts that we have already discussed. It shows the different cardiac markers such as troponin, creatine kinase, MB, LDH, etc., and the time it takes for different cardiac markers to reach their peak and the time it takes for them to come back to normal. So these durations that are shown in this graph, you may find slightly different durations in different books, and all those graphic presentations would be correct because these slight changes can be attributed to the use of different techniques that are used for measuring specific cardiac markers. Plus these changes can also be attributed to variations among different patients. So you may find different durations for the cardiac markers in different books, but I would advise you to stick to this graph because it is taken from Oxford Handbook of Clinical Medicine, and I have included in this presentation to avoid any confusion. So you people stick to this graph as well to avoid confusion. Okay, first of all, I will discuss the pattern of troponin levels change. So what happens in case of acute myocardial infarction? Troponin T and I levels start elevating within a few hours after the onset of symptoms, and they reach their peak at about 24 hours, and after that they start declining gradually, and they come back to normal after about 10 days. And because of this reason, troponin levels can be used for diagnosis of patients who present late to the hospital after suffering from MI. Next, we will take CKMB or creatine kinase MB or CK2, which is the most specific form of CK to the heart. So CKMB levels start elevating a few hours after the onset of myocardial infarction, and they reach their peak at about 24 hours or after about 1 day, and then they come back to normal after about 48 to 72 hours or 2 to 3 days. So they come back to normal within 2 to 3 days of the onset of symptoms, and because of this CKMB levels can be used to diagnose reinfarction in patients who suffer from another attack after 2 to 3 days due to any reason. Now we are going to take LDH. LDH levels start to increase at about 24 to 48 hours after the onset of symptoms. So again, in this graph it is shown 2 days or 48 hours, but LDH levels can be detected as early as 24 hours after the onset of symptoms. So LDH levels start getting elevated inside the blood within 24 to 48 hours after the onset of symptoms. They reach their peak at about 48 to 72 hours, near to the 72-hour mark, and then they start declining gradually and come back to normal after about 10 days. So LDH can also be used for late diagnosis of MI, but LDH is less specific than troponin. So this was all about cardiac markers. If you have any queries, you can mail me. Best of luck from my side, and thank you.